They look peaceful, those small American towns, quiet streets, friendly neighbors. Nothing ever happens there. But behind those smiles, behind those old houses and lonely roads, something dark is always waiting. Tonight, I'll take you inside three true small town horror stories. Stories that were never supposed to be told. These are the moments that turned normal towns into nightmares. You might think you're safe where you live, but by the end of this video, you'll start to wonder what's really hiding in your hometown. Welcome to Nazir Fears. Story 1. The Abandoned House at the Edge of Town. My name is Michael Turner, and I grew up in a small town in northern Pennsylvania. A quiet, middle-of-nowhere place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing ever really changed. When I was a kid, there was one house that everyone in town whispered about. The Dandridge House, an old decaying place sitting at the edge of the woods, surrounded by a rusted wire fence and tall, swaying weeds. Every kid in town had a story about it. Some said Henry Dandridge went insane there and murdered his wife and daughter before vanishing into the woods. Others said if you stood outside the gate at midnight, you could hear a baby crying from inside. We all laughed about it in the daytime, but once the sun went down, nobody dared go near it. Years later, I moved away, got a job in Pittsburgh, and tried to forget about that town. But when my father died last fall, I had to go back to handle his estate. I was supposed to stay for just a few days, but being back there, seeing the same streets, the same people, it made the past feel close again. On my second night, I couldn't sleep, so I took a drive through the outskirts of town. The fog was thick, curling across the headlights when I passed the old dirt road leading toward the Dandridge property. I don't even remember deciding to turn down it. It just sort of happened. The road was worse than I remembered, full of potholes and half swallowed by weeds. When I reached the clearing, I killed the engine and just stared. The house was still there, barely standing, roof sagging, windows boarded, paint eaten away by time. But one upstairs window had a missing board, and through that gap, I could swear I saw movement. Just a flicker, like someone pulling a curtain back. I told myself it was just the wind, or maybe an animal, but curiosity got the better of me. I got out, flashlight in hand, and walked up the cracked front steps. The door swung open on its own. The smell that hit me was something between mold and rusted metal. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. Dusty furniture, wallpaper curling down the walls, and old family photos scattered across the floor. My flashlight beam passed over one photo of a man, a woman, and a little girl, faces I assumed were the Dandridges. The girl couldn't have been more than 6. Someone had drawn over her eyes with black marker. As I stepped further in, I noticed footprints in the dust. Bare feet, small, leading toward the staircase. They looked fresh. Against all logic, I followed them. The steps groaned with every move, and halfway up, I heard breathing. Not mine. Slow, steady, coming from above. When I reached the landing, I saw something scrawled across the wall in faded red paint. Stay out. The footprints led to the last door at the end of the hall, the room with the missing board. I took a deep breath and pushed it open. The smell hit me like a wall. Rot. Decay. The kind that sticks to the back of your throat. My flashlight beam caught an old crib, overturned, and a small rocking chair that began to sway by itself. My pulse pounded in my ears. I turned toward the door, but then I heard it. A whisper, right behind me. It said, "Michael?" I froze. My flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled across the floor, spinning until the beam pointed toward the far corner. That's when I saw it. Something crouched there. A figure, pale and thin, knees pulled to its chest, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, eyes wide and glassy, mouth twitching like it was trying to speak. I stumbled backward, slamming into the wall, and the thing moved. It didn't crawl. It jerked like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. I ran, down the stairs, out the door, through the weeds. I didn't stop until I was back in my truck, hands shaking too hard to start the engine. When I finally looked up, the house was still there, but the front door was now closed, and in the upstairs window, I saw that same pale face staring down at me. The next morning, I went to the sheriff's office and told Sheriff Lawson what happened. He sighed, like he'd heard this kind of thing before, and said, "You shouldn't have gone up there." He told me they'd investigated years ago and found nothing but animal bones and trash. But when I mentioned the footprints and the photo, his expression changed. He leaned back and said, "Funny thing, you're not the first to see that face. The Dandridge girl was found right there, upstairs, holding that same photo you described. That was 1974. I left town that afternoon, but curiosity got the best of me one last time. I drove past the road that night, and the house was gone. Just an empty clearing with burned grass where it used to stand. But as I slowed down, something glinted in my headlights. I got out to look. Lying there in the dirt was a small rusted baby's rattle. I dropped it and drove away without looking back. I haven't told anyone this until now, but sometimes, late at night, when my house is quiet, I still hear that same whisper from behind me, soft and careful, saying my name again, Michael. Story 2. The Missing Patrol Car. My name is Thomas Reed, and for 12 years I served as a deputy in a small Wyoming town called Clearwater, the kind of place you'd miss if you blinked while driving through. Population barely 300, one diner, one gas station, and a church that doubled as a community center. I loved my job back then. Quiet nights, friendly faces, no real trouble. That all changed one winter night in 2004, when my partner, Ray Henderson, went missing, and no one ever found out what really happened. It was a Monday night, just after 9, and snow had started falling in thick, heavy flakes. Ray and I were sitting in our cruiser on Route 16, parked near the old mill, sipping gas station coffee and talking about how dead the town felt that week. Then dispatch came through, an emergency 911 call. Static and breathing, no voice. The signal came from a landline registered to the Kearney farmhouse, a property 8 miles east of town that had been abandoned since the late 80s. The owner, Margaret Kearney, had passed away years ago, and nobody had touched that place since. Ray looked at me and said, "Could be kids or squatters." We didn't have much else to do, so we decided to check it out. The drive there was rough. The road wound through empty fields and frozen pines, and the snow kept getting thicker. When we finally pulled up, the farmhouse looked like something out of a nightmare. Roof half collapsed, windows shattered, a single curtain flapping in the wind. We radioed dispatch to let them know we were on site, but all we got was static. Ray smacked the radio and laughed. "Storm's killing the signal," he said. "I'll go take a quick look." I told him I'd come with, but he shook his head. 2 minutes, he said. "If I'm not back, you can come rescue me." He grabbed his flashlight and disappeared through the front door. I stayed in the car, engine running, watching the snow swallow his footprints. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I called his name over the radio, but all I got was static. I cursed, grabbed my flashlight, and got out. The wind had picked up, and the cold felt sharp enough to cut skin. When I reached the porch, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Ray's footprints led to the front door, but there weren't any coming back. I called out, "Ray, you in there?" No response. I pushed the door open, and the smell hit me like a wall. Rot, wet wood, and something metallic. Inside, the place was falling apart, broken furniture, wallpaper peeling like dead skin, and an old rotary phone sitting on a table, its cord ripped clean out of the wall. My flashlight beam shook as I swept the room. "Ray," I called again. Silence. Then faintly, I heard it, a voice, muffled, coming from upstairs. "Tom?" It sounded like Ray. I felt relief wash over me for a second, but something about the tone was off. It sounded stretched, like a recording played too slow. "Tom? Help me." I swallowed hard and started up the stairs. Each step groaned under my weight, echoing too loud in the emptiness. Halfway up, the flashlight flickered, and I saw something painted on the wall in what looked like dark, dried streaks. "Don't follow." I hesitated, but then that voice came again, closer this time, from the end of the hallway. I turned the corner, and that's when my flashlight went out completely. Everything went black. The only sound was breathing, slow, wet breathing, just a few feet away from me. I froze, hand reaching for my sidearm, but my fingers felt numb, like I couldn't control them. The breathing got louder, then it stopped. I managed to hit the flashlight again, and when the beam came back, I saw the hallway floor covered in footprints, bare feet, wide and long, leading toward the room at the end. My pulse hammered in my ears. I called out again, "Ray!" But instead of an answer, something whispered my name. Not Ray's voice, something deeper. "Thomas?" I bolted, down the stairs, out the door, through the snow. I didn't stop until I was back in the cruiser, slamming the door and gunning the engine. The headlights cut through the blizzard just enough to show the farmhouse in my mirror. The front door was open now, and standing in the doorway was a figure. I couldn't make out a face, just a tall, thin silhouette, watching me as I drove off. When I got back to the station, I told Sheriff Dale Carter what happened. We sent a search team out that night. Half the department, fire crew, and a few locals. They combed through the house and the woods around it until sunrise. No sign of Ray. No footprints. No anything. Just his flashlight lying on the floor by the staircase. The next morning, a blizzard hit, and the search had to be called off. When it cleared 3 days later, we went back out, and Ray's patrol car was gone. The tracks in the snow led away from the house for nearly a mile before they just stopped, like the car had vanished into thin air. We searched for weeks, but found nothing. Ray Henderson was officially declared missing in January 2005. I transferred out the following spring. I couldn't drive those back roads anymore. 5 years later, I was living in Cheyenne when I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. It showed Ray's patrol car, half buried in snow, parked in front of the Kearney farmhouse. In the driver's seat was a figure, blurry, pale, and staring straight at the camera. The eyes looked like Ray's, but the mouth? It wasn't right. It was stretched into something that looked almost like a smile. I burned the photo that same night, but sometimes, when the wind howls outside my house, I swear I still hear the radio crackle to life and a voice whisper my name through the static. Story 3. The Church Basement. My name is Ethan Cole, and for most of my life, I never believed in ghosts, demons, or anything supernatural. I was raised in a small town in Indiana called Hollow Creek, where the church was the heart of the community. Every Sunday, people gathered at St. Mary's Chapel, a small white building that had stood for over 100 years. It wasn't much to look at, peeling paint, a crooked steeple, but it meant something to everyone in town. When I was 19, I got a part-time job helping out the church's caretaker, Mr. William Hawthorne. He was an older man, quiet, with gray hair and hands that always shook a little. My job was simple: mow the grass, fix broken pews, and keep the basement dry whenever it rained. I'd been doing it for about 3 weeks before I realized something wasn't right with that basement. The first time I went down there, the smell hit me. A mix of damp earth, mildew, and something metallic, like blood. The place was colder than it should have been, even in summer. It was lined with old stone walls, a few flickering bulbs overhead, and an ancient boiler that made the kind of noises that kept you up at night. Mr. Hawthorne always told me, don't stay down there too long. Just do what you need and come back up. I laughed it off at first, thinking he was just superstitious. But one evening, I was cleaning out a flooded corner when I noticed something strange. Behind one of the shelves, there was a small wooden door I hadn't seen before. It was almost hidden by a rotting curtain. When I pulled it open, a rush of cold air came out, like from a freezer. A narrow stairway led down into complete darkness. When I told Mr. Hawthorne about it later, he went pale. He said, "That door's not supposed to be open." I asked what was down there, but he just shook his head. "Storage," he said. "Old church things. Stay out of there." But that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. 2 nights later, I went back. Alone. It was around 10 p.m., and the church was empty. The moonlight spilled through the stained glass windows, painting the floor with colors that looked dull and ghostly in the dark. I took a flashlight and went straight to the basement. When I reached the little wooden door, I noticed something odd. It was already open. I called out, "Mr. Hawthorne!" No answer. Just silence, thick and heavy. I aimed my flashlight down the steps. The walls were made of stone, damp and blackened, and the air smelled foul. I went down slowly, one step at a time. My shoes squelched in something wet. The stairs ended in a narrow tunnel lined with wooden crosses, nailed into the walls. Some of them were upside down. My light flickered. Then I heard something. A soft humming. It sounded like a woman's voice, coming from somewhere deeper in the dark. I froze. My instinct screamed at me to turn around, but curiosity won. I followed the sound, moving carefully through the tunnel until I reached a heavy iron door. Someone had carved a symbol into it. 3 circles intersecting. I reached out and touched it. The metal was ice cold. The humming stopped. Then, from the other side of the door, came 3 slow knocks. I stumbled back, heart pounding. My flashlight went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled with the light, and when it came back on, the door was slightly open. Just a few inches. Enough for me to see something inside. Rows of candles burning by themselves, even though there was no one there. And in the middle of the room, a chair with straps. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate. I spun around, but there was no one there. Then a whisper, right next to my ear. "He shouldn't have opened it." I ran. I don't remember climbing the stairs or pushing through the basement door, just bursting into the main hall of the church, gasping for air. Mr. Hawthorne was standing there, pale as paper, holding a candle. He didn't look surprised to see me. He just said, "You let it out, didn't you?" I asked him what he meant, but he wouldn't answer. He walked past me and locked the basement door with a ring of old keys. His hands were shaking worse than ever. "You stay away from here," he said, "no matter what you hear." That was the last night I worked there. The next morning, Mr. Hawthorne was gone. The church secretary said he'd packed his things and left town before sunrise. Nobody's seen him since. A few weeks later, the pastor asked me to help move some furniture from the basement. I told him no, and I quit on the spot. But before I left, I glanced down the stairs one last time. The small wooden door was gone, just a smooth wall of concrete where it had been. That was 15 years ago. St. Mary's still stands, but the congregation's smaller now. Some nights, when I pass by, I swear I can see candlelight flickering through the cracks of the basement windows. Once, I thought I saw someone looking out. An old man's face, half hidden in the dark, and sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I hear that same soft humming again, coming from beneath the floor.